Thank you. Thank you very much.
Should I send you a message? I'm fine. Are you? Oh, you. Alex, let's go. Let's come back. We won't get everybody.
Keynote speaker in the middle somewhere.
Sorry. Hello.
Come out better. And so the first day was the liberation of the African continent, of which Ghana played a very significant role. The Ghanaians were glad for that. And actually became the launch pad of the African liberation movement. As young children, we knew that Kaunda, Mugabe, and all of them lived in Ghana and held Ghanaian passports, diplomatic passports, to prevent them from being harassed or arrested. And so there was the excitement that if we came under self-rule and we governed ourselves, prosperity will naturally come. Unfortunately, Ghana again, the pioneer in most things, quickly dispatched our first president in a coup, and then our Nigerian cousins also followed, and all the other countries followed. And our countries went under military rule. There's been a rotating window of military governments return to constitutional democracy, military governments return to constitutional democracy. And in Ghana's case, of course, we had the NLC, the National Liberation Council, and then we had the Progressive Party government, UP government under Dr. Buzia. Then, of course, the National Redemption Council, the Supreme Military Council, then to the Third Republic under the PNP, Dr. Liman. Then came the June 4, and back to democracy, and then 31st December. After a long period under military rule, we came to a consensus, and it was like the Arab Spring for Africa, where we decided that we had had enough of military dictatorship, and that the people would be better served by democratic and constitutional governments. And so one by one, African countries began to pivot back to constitutional rule and democratic governance. But the thing is, democratic governance guarantees the rights and freedoms of the people, which is true. But in themselves will not bring opportunity and economic prosperity unless you abide by certain principles. And so Ghana went back to constitutional democracy in 1992. There was a lot of excitement about it. President Rollins became the first civilian president of Ghana, followed by President before. And since then, there's been a revolving door of NDC at one time for 8 years, NPP to comes for 8 years. But for those who attended my inauguration, if you were not on the Black Star Square and had locked you in a room, and you could hear the announcement of the acknowledgement of the presidents who were coming up to greet me, you would have noticed that the loudest applause was for the countries that have overthrown democracy. And that is why, for those of us who believe in democracy, we must continue to take the advantage of dialogues like this to see what is wrong with our implementation of democracy so that we can make a reset that makes the youth continue to have faith in democratic governance and not romanticize unconstitutional government. So these are just a few words I thought to talk about, but also to mention the role of the new media. We don't have the traditional TV and radios as the main source of information now. Anybody, a warm welcome to you all. And I say, Akwaba, what's that, Obake, Wisdom, Sandezua. I mean, all our languages have the word welcome, and I think we accommodate everybody. It is our privilege and an honor to host the 2025 Democracy Dialogue. And we owe a debt of gratitude to President Goodluck Jonathan, who has been a towering pillar and whose life embodies the struggle for democracy, peace, and progress in Africa. And through this dialogue, he continues to remind us that democracy is not self-sustaining. It must be nurtured and defended. And I wish to thank all the important people who have come, President Ọbasanjọ, Peter Obi, I mean, too many to mention, to lend your presence to this all-important dialogue. Our theme, Why Democracy Dies, Why Democracies Die, is not a verdict but a warning. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. Around the world, democratic systems are under strain. Václav Havel, the Czech statesman, once observed, democracy is not something that occurs once for all. It must be fought for every day. That is precisely the spirit of this dialogue we're undertaking. History offers us sobering lessons. In Latin America, democracies collapsed under juntas in the 70s, but later renewal came through truth, reconciliation, and strong institutions. In Asia, South Korea and Taiwan showed how democracies can thrive alongside economic growth, while Myanmar warns of reversals when militarism overwhelms institutions. In Europe, the rise of fascism in the 1930s teaches us how despair and demagoguery can corrode democracy. In the United States, Abraham Lincoln's immortal words still echo. It says, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." And yet, government of the people, by the people, for the people, survival is never guaranteed. Ghana has earned recognition as a beacon of democracy in Africa. And since 1992, we've witnessed peaceful transitions, a vibrant media, resilient civil society. But let us be candid. Some negatives in our politics threaten survival of democracy. Inequality, lack of opportunity for young people, monetization of our politics, misinformation, and all others pose grave risks to the survival of democracy. Kwame Nkrumah once warned, and I quote, he said, "Freedom is not something that one people can bestow on another as a gift. They claim it as their own, and none can keep it from them. Our people claim their freedom, but we must guard it jealously." This was Kwame Nkrumah. You could change freedom and put democracy, and it would be the same thing. So my question is, why democracies fail? And why democracies die? The first one is weak institutions that fail to protect the rights of the people. The second is corruption and elite capture that erodes the trust of the people in democratic governance. The third is exclusion and inequality that alienate portions of the citizenry. The fourth is leadership deficits that squander legitimacy of governments. And the fifth is external pressures that exploit the vulnerability in democratic systems. And so, to renew democracy, we must do certain things. Of course, the first one is that we must strengthen institutions, independent courts, parliaments, and our electoral bodies. The second is that we must deliver development, because democracy without development, democracy without roads, democracy without schools, hospitals, and jobs will always be at risk. The third, we must educate our citizens. For us, Thomas Sankara said, and I quote, he said, "A soldier without political education or ideological training is a potential criminal." The same is true of leadership without ethical grounding. The fourth, we must protect media and civic space. A free press is democracy's immune system. We must also build regional solidarity, because the fall of democracy in one nation weakens democracy in all other nations. As host, Ghana recommits to upholding democracy, not just in rhetoric, but in practice. We defend the independence of our institutions, we will support free expression, and will continue to stand with ECOWAS in promoting democratic governance across West Africa. Distinguished citizens, democracy dies when citizens lose faith, when leaders abandon integrity, and institutions succumb to capture. But democracy can be renewed when citizens rise to defend it. And as the former Czech President Havel said again, and I quote, he said, "The salvation of this human world lies nowhere else than in the human heart." The survival of democracy depends on us leaders, citizens, institutions, and for us choosing courage over complacency. And so let this dialogue in Accra be remembered not as a lament for dying democracies, but as a rebirth of hope. Let us leave here with a renewed determination to safeguard our democracies, to make our democracies deliver, and pass on to the future generations a legacy of freedom, justice, and dignity. And as an African proverb says, when the roots of the tree are deep, there is no reason to fear the wind. If the roots of our democracy are deep, there is no need to fear unconstitutional governments. If we deepen the roots of our democracy in our nations, it will withstand any storm. May God bless this gathering, may God bless Africa, and I wish you fruitful deliberation.
Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Dr. Jonathan, and who is the owner of the foundation that has brought us together. I was not supposed to be talking to you now, but the Executive Director of the Jonathan Foundation came to me as I was sitting by Bishop Kuka, who is supposed to give a keynote address. I was supposed to have a fireside chat, and I was prepared for that. I don't know where the fire will come from. But I was prepared for the chat. Then she came to me and said, "Do you mind saying something now?" Saying in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And even before I could ask him, then the unprepared, unprepared. Yes. And I listened to the president of ECOWAS, who ended on 3 notes. democracy dies because democracy has refused to be reformed. There are three aspects of democracy that cannot continue to exist the way it was defined by the American president. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. And in that definition, democracy is meant to be all people's action. And if democracy will not die and be buried, not just die, die and be buried, democracy must be reformed in context, in content, and in practice. In my part of the world, we have said that the thing that killed the vegetable is the insect in the vegetable. The thing that is killing democracy and will kill it is the practice of democracy. All the essentials that should be part and parcel of democracy are being ignored or are being bastardized in such a way that democracy has failed to deliver. And democracy cannot deliver unless it is reformed. And if it is not reformed, it will not only fail, it will die and it will be buried. And yet, there is not any real substitute for democracy as it was originally designed. Government of the people, all the people. What we have now is not government of the people, the government of some people, by some people, over all the people. And they talk of government democracy as government of the majority. If you talk of government of the majority, what do you do with the minority? Then minority is not part of the people. I hope as we go on today, we will deliberate on this and probably we will find the means by which we will put new life into democracy through democratic reform. Thank you very much.
As in other professions,
Yes, please.
you want to be a priest, you go to training, you want to be a mechanic, you want to be a barber, every other thing, you want to be a shoe shiner and other things, you have to go and learn. And in many cases, you have to be given a certificate. Politics is the only system and you don't need training and you don't need a certificate. And I think this is what makes politics more dangerous in Africa, because it's an all-commerce game. But I'm a bit worried about the pessimism that is implied in our choice of theme, which is when you say how democracies die. Because if you say how democracies die and you invite a bishop, maybe I'm expected to officiate the funeral rites of democracy. But as you will hear from my paper and my presentation, I'm far more optimistic. And I also
Please pardon me and forgive me for the rude
self-loathing and self-flagellating lamentations, wondering when we shall ever catch up with the West. Using Western liberal democracy as our models will always leave us feeling that we are not like the Americans, and we are not like the British, and we are not like the Europeans. Therefore, there must be something wrong with us. It is this patronizing self-righteousness that enabled President Obama to stand here in June 2012 and he said to the people of Ghana that Africa needs strong institutions, not strong men. Not unexpectedly, Obama received standing ovations, and yet no one bothered to ask President Obama whether there was a necessary contradiction between strong men and strong institutions, or whether weak men had ever built any institutions anywhere. Then as now, to me, President Obama's irritating pontification merely exploited the arrogant and condescending manner that Americans and Europeans have come to view Africa and its development, deliberately ignoring or sidestepping their complicated roles in the sabotaging of democracy across the world. For them, Africans still remain white man's money, and that somehow our underdevelopment is a character flaw. Ignoring the exploitative historical processes that have led them to where they are, we are often made to feel inferior and made to ignore the issues of those whose backs these so-called strong institutions were built in Europe and America. Perhaps this feeling that we are failing may have helped the organizers of this conference to frame this conference as a call to democracy's funeral rites. Am I therefore right to assume that the theme of this conference has been inspired by the book, How Democracies Die, authored by two American political scientists, Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Zippert? Although many Africans, as usual, found inspiration in these cynical views of democracy expressed in the book, many of our people tend to forget that this book is directly a liberal attack at the Trump presidency or America under President Trump. But it is not to deny that there are lessons for us, rather. The issue is that African scholarship must find reasons to focus on Africa's historical and cultural histories, appreciating that even after 200 years of exploiting others, democracy in America, democracy in Europe and elsewhere is still largely a work in progress. In the course of our assessing progress within democracy, we cannot ignore the savagery, brutality, bloodshed that are now woven into the fabric of our legacies as countries and as a continent in relation to our past. Nor can we ignore the extent to which military rule arrested our right to democracy, propelled by false narratives of missionary zeal to drive progress. The military marched into state houses across the continent of Africa. The president of Ghana has most eloquently choreographed a lot of that. And yet years of military brutality and bloodshed through endless coups and counter-coups across Africa helped to fracture our democratic ecosystem, destroying the very foundations of our cultures of human rights, free media, functional and effective democracy, judiciary, legislative assemblies, and constitutions. Years of misrule resurrected and deepened ethnic consciousness as ethnic blocs sought to use military power and autocracy to institutionalize ethnic regional hegemonies. Subsequently, in the 90s, after the so-called end of history, half-hearted plans to return our countries to the path of democracy were often marred by the flying ambitions of the military men and women themselves. Autocracy, they mutated as autocratic dictators, pretending to be Democrats, and in my view, debates about the duality of our democracy must therefore be measured against the backdrop of this convoluted view of history. With all its structural flaws, Africa's march to democracy is seemingly unstoppable. Africans know where they have come from. The future may be uncertain for them, but we have no hope of returning to the Egypt of autocracy and dictatorship that has been our lot. Our two countries, Nigeria and Ghana, remain the best examples. Our people are hungry, they are still poverty-stricken, they are living in destitution, yes. And democracy has not delivered what it promised to them, yes. Democracy has not made them safe, yes. Democracy has not ended years of oppressive and suffocating corruption, yes. And yes, our people are still caught in the course of violence. However, our situation today is evident that our people have nailed their hopes for progress and development on the mask of democracy, all its flaws and very hostile, strong headwinds. It is historic for us in Nigeria that Nigeria has conducted 7 successive back-to-back elections since 1999 till date. These elections have been seriously flawed, they have been bloody, they have been chaotic, they have been below par. Yet, unlike a few years ago, Nigeria, neither the losers nor frustrated citizens of Nigeria have called the military to stage a coup as it was, and it has always been the history of our country. People have now realized that military rule has proven itself to be a cure worse than the disease, and that the military itself has also realized the institutional